44. Still here.
Now you're saying.
Someone's got to say it.
What?
Someone's got to say it. Otherwise, we won't be here.
That's the only thing that's keeping us here is the fact that we're safe. I feel like I'm less and less here.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, the idea of me being
More.
here or being here is a little bit nebulous.
So we have a topic for today.
Yeah.
Calling it victimhood or the victim mindset, something like that. But everybody does it. Even you, dear listener.
Dear listener. After watching Bridgerton's, dear listeners.
Gentle reader, gentle listener.
I think to begin with, when we come into this world, there are like things we can't explain, right? Like, when we first face any kind of a situation that doesn't actually like make sense, or maybe is has some hint of injustice in it, or we are being told what to do, but what to do is actually against what we want to do. It is very easily on a kind of like a small scale level to insert like, oh, this is out of my control. Like I'm being made to do this. Somebody else is doing this to me.
Right.
And this is outside of my hands. And so the more we feel out of control, the more we feel like our life is not our own, the more the idea of victimhood becomes an idea. Right? We almost through this feeling of being outside of our sovereignty, create a justification for it. And justification is the victimhood.
That's a good way to put it. Outside of our sovereignty.
Right.
Yeah. And that encompasses everything from, you can't do something as a child to, your boss making you come in on weekends to, being, an abusive relationship, or even, some sort of war crime thing. All of those fall under the outside of your sovereignty spectrum, and all of those could be looked at as, as being the victim.
Well, it is almost hard to justify to live in the world where things are always happening outside of your control or to you, or and they're not good, right? Like usually this is not like, oh, rainbows and butterflies, therefore I'm functioning outside of my sovereignty, therefore
I can't
I'm a victim.
I can't
right?
control all this money that's falling into my bank account. Oh, poor me. Yeah, it's not that.
It's the bad stuff, right? When we're young and we cannot explain quote unquote bad things. But when I say bad things, to us, to begin with, they're very simple and very like,
right. Oh, I can't go play at Jimmy's house because
it's raining outside.
It's raining, or we have to eat, or mom or dad says no for an unexplained reason.
Right.
Because I said so.
And to begin with, right, we are almost, I would say, inadvertently positioned to not have sovereignty by the mere nature of how most of the parents raise us.
Yeah. I mean, in as much as when you're a newborn baby, you can barely communicate. You're, crying because you're hungry, or you're sleepy, or you've got a poopy diaper. That's the extent of it. And, you don't get to say where you go or when you go. And
yeah, but at that age, you're okay with it, right? You don't understand for that. Well, I mean, to some extent.
You might not be okay with, I want food and I'm crying, but I don't get it.
Yeah, in my case, I was scared and I'm crying, and I continue to be scared.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So there's this lock I would say luck that happens when we are first come into this reincarnation or any interpretation of us that very quickly gets us into this idea of lack of sovereignty.
Yeah.
And
Um,
then thus we interpret it as victimhood.
yeah. And that just gets, I was going to say worse, but more pronounced as we get older. And,
Yeah.
they become, oh, now you have to go to school, whether you want to or not. Now you have to do homework, whether you want to or not. Now you can't go over to Jimmy's house because it's dinner time or whatever.
Yeah.
Now you can't drive because you're not old enough. Now you have to take these driving classes or whatever. It's just the world, society, people, the world to some degree imposes its will on us as individuals, and that is a unavoidable fact of life. In as much as that, everybody doesn't get everything they want all the time. Period.
Yeah. But if we came here to find yourself, right? Then, a very easy way to lose yourself would be to feel like you're not yourself and you're not sovereign and you're not able to make decisions and you lost your way because things are happening to you and not by you.
Yeah.
And so, the game we have been playing is just that. Every single decision in our life and every single reaction, like it's almost like all reactions we have are somehow tied to this idea that, oh, look, I'm not sovereign. This is not my sovereignty. This is not my decision. This is happening to me. And then thus, look, I'm a victim.
Yeah.
Because then you don't have to do anything about it. Victimhood almost excuses you from
That's right.
actions and choices to realize that you are in charge. You are sovereign being. Things happening this way does not lead to you being a victim.
Right.
But it is an easy excuse to
It's
stay with the status quo.
it's an easy excuse, and you get to play your own little pity party, and you may even get to milk it from other people too, depending on what it is.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing is people using the victimhood mindset in order to then leverage sovereignty
Right.
into the world as a manipulation technique.
Right. Oh, poor me. Talking to your friends. Oh, poor me. I have to work weekends or something, or just either externally to your friends or the world. Poor. I don't know. You can imagine some famous person or person with power who something bad happens to, who can then leverage that into something. Um, right. Either as a victim. I mean, you can do it multiple ways, but you could. Today's topic is doing it to the under the eyes of victimhood.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm sure there's multiple family members, but I have one family member in particular that comes out that has spent their entire life living as such.
I've spent most of my life living that way too.
Right? Always being disempowered.
Yeah, disempowered is the word, isn't it?
Right? But then the disempowerment gets justified under, oh well, it's not my fault. I don't actually have power. I can't have power because I'm the victim here. And so you spend your entire life living in disempowerment in
Right,
order to justify inaction. Or by inaction, I don't actually mean aggressively like going doing the opposite of victim, like of being the aggressor or
right,
whatever. I actually mean cognitively exploring the ideas, right? I- How about this? Let me establish a timeline. If we move past the ideas of ourselves as toddlers, right, or as children, or as teenagers, right, where the idea of our parents suppressing us in any way, or household having rules, and therefore, as long as you live under my house, this is the rules type of a thing, which I think everybody heard that, especially to the United States audience. Um, right when you move past that, right, the point of you becoming an adult is the point in which that is no longer an excuse you can use of why you're the victim, right? You're not under this household, therefore these rules apply,
Right.
right? You're not a child who's literally dependent on parents for food and shelter and safety.
Right.
At some point, you become an adult, and that there's that pivotal point where then, depending on how you were raised, and in fact, if you were raised in the victim like mindset that you imposed on yourself, at that point, you can start to have choices into recognition of here's the way I have adapted into living. But let's say being 18 or 19 or 20 or whatever age you decide to move out of the house, you can start to rethink um, what points of that are still valid, or if you have come to that conclusion or that definition, does it still hold space today?
Right.
Does it need to hold space today? Or can you reevaluate your position? Can you reevaluate your sense of disempowerment? Um, and then thus propagate that all the way through your life, not just in like one aspect of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the antidote to victimhood is responsibility, because as a victim, you by definition have no responsibility over this. It's completely outside of your control. But if you take a situation and you go, well, this isn't what I want for myself. Like if you're in a bad job or something, for example, then you know it, it isn't that there's necessarily an easy way out of this situation, but reframing it into, wait, this is my situation, and it is my responsibility for how I feel about it. A, which is maybe the biggest part of it all, and B, it's my responsibility to change that if I want to change that. There's a component here about of being present, I think, as well. Because if you're lost in the victimhood, you're not really in the moment. And I understand that there are all kinds of undesirable situations that people can be in, which are largely out of their control. This is true. I would say that the vast majority of those are actually more within your control than you realize. A, like a bad job or bad relationship or a bad house or whatever situation it is, if that was, I'm not saying it's easy, but you could get a new job, you could move out, you could leave the partner, you could do these things, which may or may not be the right choice. That's all beside the point.
Yeah.
The point is that y- people have a lot more power than they realize, and they're all too eager to give it up in order to maintain that status quo of a victimhood. But step one might be to be present and actually see the situation for what it is. It may not be a great situation, sure, but being present I think would let you understand that situation better and lead to a sense of responsibility over being in it. And it's, this is not really a blame the victim type thing, but it is, nobody is going to get you out of it except yourself. Just from a practical standpoint, if you're in a shitty job, short of being fired, you're going to stay in that shitty job unless you do something. And do something, maybe leave, do something, maybe talk to your manager, do something, maybe change your mindset. And because, if you go into, I know because I've done this, if you go into work every day with a shitty attitude and you hate the boss and you hate all these people, it's just going to continue to be shitty. It just will propagate itself. But if you go in and going, well, I know I haven't liked this so far, but instead of, moping about, I'm going to actually, let's say, try and do my best. And, maybe that would end up being recognized. Maybe that you would get promoted out of that situation. Maybe the manager or whatever would stop treating you like a shitty employee because you have stopped being a shitty employee. Maybe you will develop some self-respect that will, be visible to everybody else. And, if you stop hating yourself as the victim, because it's easy as the victim to hate yourself, everybody else will stop hating you too. But all that starts with being aware that you're playing the victim, and then accepting that you have the responsibility and power to change it.
Yeah, but to begin with, like, being aware that you're playing the victim, me, it would be like, why?
Why are you playing the victim?
Yeah, right. Victimhood is a choice into a situation,
Yeah.
right? Now, I understand that, let's say, as a newborn baby, things might have come into our life that were even like cognitively beyond recognition right now. And so it created these small definitions and patterns. It created patterns of like, oh look, things are not being done the way I want to, right? Like, oh, I'm not safe, or I'm hungry, or look, I feel like I'm not needed or wanted or loved, right? And so all of those things to begin with our limited capacity to process trauma or to process the world, gets deposited as almost like these negative nuggets against ourselves, right?
Mhm.
Where, well, obviously, if the adult is doing this, the adult is right because we're being taught to they think the adults are right, and us the children are wrong, and therefore it must be me, right? We always kind of like take the situation because we cannot understand the nuances of it and the large scales of it as children. It's so big, then, oh, it must be me. And so we internalize everything to begin with in the world of, right? But that internalization develops this pattern of everything being you,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And then through that pattern, the victimhood sets in because there's nothing you can do about it when you're 2 years old.
Almost the opposite of like a narcissist where everything is me, but in a good, I don't want to say good way. In a
Yeah, but most of us are not in that position. Most of
right.
us are actually like, oh no, everything is my fault. I would say
Yeah, I would say it's vast majority is that.
I can relate to that more than I can to, oh,
Sure.
that's everybody else's
Yeah,
fault.
no, it's harder for me to relate to that overly narcissistic. Everything is me, but because of how awesome I am. It's more everything is me because of I fucked it up. Is a lot easier for me personally to relate to,
Yeah, no,
especially historically.
yeah, no, I don't know if this is a narcissistic definition of me. I do remember being as a child and looking at adult behaviors and thinking, why? Like, why is this necessary? Why are they behaving this way? Why are they reacting this way? I guess maybe to some standpoint of just like confusion about how the world works. But at the same time, I did recognize, oh, look, but I literally have no way of having my life be anything different because I am a child, and they are running the ship, right?
Yeah.
They're steering it into, icebergs. And that became very obvious to me that like I am on Titanic and it is gonna sink
and
or
and
is currently sinking.
and you wanted to become an adult as soon as possible. I wanted to become adult as soon as possible
I
at a
I
fairly
yeah,
early age.
yeah, but that so right, that idea that you are on Titanic and somebody else is steering the ship is what sets in that idea of victimhood because you're like, I'm a child, and yeah, technically, w my parents were good at listening to me, but not necessarily right, but at the same time, I'm not verbalizing this, right? I'm not verbalizing as an adult, uh, the scale of this conversation or the scale of what it means to have a sovereign space into decision, right? Now, in my parents' case, it was even more difficult for them to determine their sovereignty or feel like they have sovereignty because they're living in communist Ukraine. You know what I mean? So, based on the social economic standards and really the country as a whole, victimhood is really sets in early.
Right.
Like, not only do I feel like my parents are, doing things that they're doing, I'm actually seeing it go past my parents and I'm seeing it go into the social economic standards of the country, of a nation as a whole, right?
Right. It's at so many levels.
Yeah. And so the idea of victimhood sets in even on a larger scale because at the time, let's say it's Soviet Union. So I know what Ukraine is, but really what I know is Soviet Union, which is like, to me, if you look at the map of former Soviet Union, it's like I don't know, 1/3 of the world,
It's huge
right? Or 1/4 of the world as far as, square footage
area.
goes.
Yeah.
You're like, this is the status quo of everyone in this region.
Right. Except for a very few people at the very top.
Yeah, right. But to me, I cognitively don't even understand that there's very few people who are running this and manipulating the situation is it, right? So I'm looking at it on this global scale, and what I can perceive is if the country reflects, and the country at the time was just so big that my childhood mindset goes, oh my gosh, everyone must be in this mindset. And so at that point, it almost becomes like unsurmountable amount of change. You look at change and you quantitatively, exponentially like run out into the future and you go, how much action is necessary? How much energy is necessary? How much inertia is necessary to change the status quo? And you're like, fuck, I am 5 years old. That's not happening.
Yeah.
And the victimhood really sets in then.
Wow. I guess I don't know. I can't relate exactly to that. But I remember being young, less than 10 for sure. And I very vividly remember wanting to be an adult so that I can get away from the situation that I was in because I wasn't terribly happy. And B, I would have, autonomy and sovereignty and everything, which is, I mean, not incorrect in its own way, but at the same time, it was, deferring sovereignty into the future.
Yeah, but you had a chance of hope.
I had a chance of hope.
Yeah, right. Like that's
Whether or
something.
not I claim that in young adulthood is a different story,
Yeah,
but
it's this is another thing I think that comes into victimhood. The longer we spend in the idea that there is no hope for this situation to be different, right? The harder it gets for us to
break out
to
of it.
to break out of it, or even to see ourselves past the fact that this is somehow a choice. And in my case, I think very early on, I realized the idea of how the country is functioning, the chances of breaking out of victimhood or gaining your own sovereignty in any way, basically impossible. Like, I think it was, I mean, obviously I incarnated into this world in order to experience that as a baseline functionality, right? But and then when the Soviet Union broke apart in 91, right? By 92, it is actually even more chaos. Now, the now I realize actually that opened doors for potentiality of hope.
You're
But
right.
back then, it actually things went
It went
backwards.
from a bad system to no system, which, depending on how enterprising you are, you could really take advantage of that.
Yeah,
But, that's not a majority of people. That's a handful of people who are
yeah,
smart and clever and maybe sneaky enough to,
yeah,
depending, you could take advantage of it in good ways or bad ways, I'm sure.
yeah. No, I knew a lot of people who were utilizing that. I say I knew a lot. There were some people I knew that utilized it to the point where it was like next level.
Yeah.
um, yeah, but yeah, but the you know what was interesting is the only thing I now realize there was this nugget of hope that came in. So let's see, I was born in 81, so Soviet Union breaks up in 91, so I'm 10 years old. And then by 92, actually no, so 92, 91, and 92 are really bad. And by 93, my parents start talking about the idea of us moving to the United States. And something registered in my mind is like, wait, the United States is like a reset. Like it is literally the land of opportunity.
Yeah.
And like if you had to, right, like I'm once again putting it on a pedestal, but I do think the United States belongs on a pedestal. It it was like, holy shit, there's hope, right? I'm gonna start crying right now. And so by at 93, so wait, at this point, so that I'm let's say 12 years old, this idea registers like, oh my gosh, there is a way to change the status quo. There is a way to change this mind that is completely preset into hopeless existence where you feel like a complete victim
Yeah.
with zero way out.
Yeah.
And so at 12, that registered to me that there's this 11 or 12, I think, to where like, oh my gosh, it is literally like a complete reset of your being. That is how I saw it.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there's a whole other sense of things that come in.
Sure.
Another levels of victimhood because you're
right.
coming into a foreign country with no money, you're poor,
Don't
you
speak
don't
the
speak the
language.
language,
Right. Which is,
The-
but all those things with the right attitude, mindset, outlook are overcomable. You overcame all of those.
the victimhood mindset.
Well, no, don't speak the language, no money. What was the third one? Don't know anybody. Right. All all those you have successfully overcome. So
Yeah.
it
I've
can
successfully
be done.
overcome because in my mind at that time, somehow I positioned United States because that is how it's positioned in Ukraine, period. Like, right, is the land of opportunity and it's oh, like a better way to be. And so that idea of my parents, when my parents sold me on the United States, or the idea of why we need to move there because the life will be better, what I saw was food on the table, running water, and electricity. And so to me,
Right.
the fact that those three things would exist, right?
Right.
I'm getting like teary-eyed right now thinking, oh my gosh, that is probably like the number one thing I want my children to have is running water, electricity, and food.
Right. And I've short of, a couple of days ago, 30 minutes when the power went out, and it's like, what? How dare that power go? How dare, why those people need to get on this right now? And there's this entitlement almost around it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never not had food. I've never not had water. In fact, it's weird going to a, a country where tap water isn't drinkable. It's like,
Well,
it's bizarre.
tap water isn't drinkable to us. The population is drinking tap water.
Sure. Yes, I guess. Yes. And,
Yeah, because they make yeah,
food,
right.
of course there's food, there's always food and there's always electricity. It's
Mm.
just so, of course it's there, which is, I understand, an incredibly entitled and privileged position to come from.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I firmly believe that everyone on planet Earth should have that too.
Yeah. No, I do too.
Yeah.
It is a unfortunate situation when people don't. Yeah, but I think that's interesting, and to me that is interesting. That is what came up to me is the second you realize. So right, the victimhood will be there as long as you're almost like your idea, you feel hopeless, right? That was one of my triggers for the longest time is feeling hopeless. I spent so much time feeling hopeless in Ukraine as a victim, right? That the idea of hope um, set in as kind of a gauge between how victim I feel and how victim I do not feel, right? Which is, partially maybe related to depression, right? And partially related to your idea of being present or not being present. I'm taking everything that I have known, which is basically the past, and I have decided that I was a victim in that situation. I have decided that it was a hopeless situation that I cannot possibly climb out of, right? And thus, in Ukraine, my thought process is, yeah, there's no way out of it forward. Look at the last 12 years of my
Yeah.
life. Look at my parents. Look how hard they're trying. Look
No,
at everybody else that we know who is in the exact same situation. There's no way out of it. But then, right, situations change, ideas change, cycles change. I mean, heck, me being 12 versus me being 18 is a big difference that I could have looked at as an opportunity for a switch or a change or a trigger, right? Um, but to me, United States basically was my pivot point.
I think that right there is maybe the biggest defining factor of victimhood is that all this past, all these past examples, this past history, you project that into the future, and
Yeah.
the future is not going to be any Certainly, it's not going to be any different from the past, and it's not going to be any better than the past. Versus an empowered mindset is the past doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
It was good, it was bad, irrelevant. The future is what I make it,
Yeah.
and I can make it anything I want to make it,
Yeah.
and I want to make it awesome. So it will be awesome because I'm going to, you know, manifest that, work for that, achieve that, craft that, set things up so that that's the way. Take
Yeah.
action
Yeah. But you have to believe in yourself
to believe in
and you
yourself,
have to have hope
right?
that you could do it. In the so what I'm I guess trying to point out is you almost need to find that belief within self and determination that
Yeah,
and the responsibility into not necessarily physically changing your life, which will be the result of it, but mentally coming into the space of empowerment and sovereignty
I think that's
and
it.
recognition that you are the determining factor or how your future looks from actually every moment, like this
Right.
moment and this moment and this moment forward. And the past in no way defines anything.
I think that's it. It's the victimhood is not so much of what situation you're in, but how you feel about that situation. So there can be, very successful people who from the outside ostensibly look, oh my gosh, he's at the top of his profession and he's got all the money and he's got the cars and he's got the wife and he's got whatever, all that stuff, who feels like a victim. And then there's some, you know, person, oh, they've got a terrible job and they work at the DMV and they do whatever. I don't know. No offense to the DMV, but and they can't find a they don't have a girlfriend and they this and they that, who does not feel like a victim. They feel empowered. Whether or not they're happy with their job, whether or not they're happy with their life is almost irrelevant. It's it's the mindset of I feel autonomy over this. And I'm here and maybe I don't like this job, but that's a separate issue from feeling like a victim.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could feel like a victim to your success, you know, in as much as I'm sure people have like, I've got all the success. Now I am compelled to take it a step further. I am compelled to release another Grammy winning album. Right. And if I don't, I feel like a failure. So they're trapped
Mhm.
almost by it. And you could be that could be a form of victimhood. On one hand, hey, that's it's victimhood but with money. But
Yeah.
it's but again, the physical circumstances are irrelevant as far as the victimhood is concerned. It's all about how you feel about it, how you feel about yourself.
Yeah. How you feel about the circumstances of the life and how much responsibility are you taking for those circumstances
Right.
as being your own choice?
Responsibility and accountability.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think and this is kind of esoteric, but I do believe this is how it works. I think the universe or whatever you want to call it brings you these pivot points of opportunities where like even if you're yourself feeling like a victim, something comes into your life and it's strange at times and sometimes it's like out of nowhere and sometimes it's like just to me they almost seemed strange. Like later looking back at those moments, they seem strange and they seem out of place and they seem out of character with the pattern, right? If you can look at it that way. That those moments are kind of like your pivotal points of opportunities where if you're in that moment and you utilize that moment and you look into that moment and you kind of have this little opportunity for a click, for something to switch, for something to change, for your mindset to start looking at things differently. And you almost have these like pivotal points that could be your exit points out of victimhood
Yeah.
or out of feeling hopelessness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're little, I would say, like reinforcement nuggets to get your subconscious mind
Yeah.
that is on the course of victim and the course of helplessness to start building a narrative outside of that.
Right. I mean, you could look at that and it also could reinforce your victimhood if you look at it the wrong way.
Yes, but it's a pivotal point where you can make a choice. Do I once again, put this into the bucket of me being a victim, or do I put this in a bucket of like, what? Look, here's a way I can
Right.
declare sovereignty. Here's a way I can feel empowered. And so, enough of those pivotal moments where you make a choice into empowerment, where you make the choice into responsibility of looking at things differently, or you actively feel sovereignty in your intuition and into yourself to not go the victimhood direction, but go into a different direction. It almost, from like Joe Dispenza's standpoint, let's say from his teaching, develops a different neural pathway where it offsets your ingrained, Grand Canyon of victimhood and hopelessness into like, oh, look, I am like slowly, step by step, climbing out of the Grand Canyon and onto the plateau of at least like flat line.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And
I've had those moments, and like now looking back, I see those moments as times where I utilized them for what they were meant to be, and times where I once again felt into the victimhood.
yeah. And it almost doesn't matter if that opportunity succeeds or not. Like
What do you mean by that?
if you I'm trying to come up with a example, you you're at work and there's an opportunity for a promotion, right? One of your team's going to be the new manager because the manager's leaving or something like that. I don't know. And it's like you could either go, "Oh my gosh, look at this! I do have a way out of this. A way out of this is maybe a way out of this is possible." And you realize that there's, you know, it empowers you in some way. Whether or not you get that position almost becomes irrelevant if that is enough of a trigger to let you realize your own power. You get the job, you don't get the job, it doesn't matter at that level.
She might be playing on it. I don't know. I don't think she's actually doing
I don't know. I didn't know who it was.
it. Just saying.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it working out the way you want it to, of course, helps boost that, but it doesn't have to necessarily.
Yeah.
It could be an opportunity that ends up failing, but as long as you look at the opportunity and realize, wait, I do have opportunities. I do have the power to change this. There are ways out of this situation, maybe a situation that you're in that you didn't even consider, that you couldn't dream up
Yeah.
or something.
What came to mind whenever you started giving work examples. The job that I got in sales, right? You know what I'm talking about, but just a kind of a backstory. It's a job in sales, and I'm straight out of college, and we're dirt poor, and we have, no money. We're barely like making our rent on the apartment, and this job is commission based. So like technically, I'm not making money unless I go out there and sell, and the job is basically what's the movie Glenn Ross,
Mhm.
where there's a character Alec Baldwin plays it,
Yeah.
and they yell. I have not actually seen the movie, but I did see the clip of Alec Baldwin yelling.
I think we've
Have talked about
linked
this
to it on
before.
this before. Yeah.
Yeah, so like
It's like the most famous scene in that movie.
yeah. So it's a type of a sales job. I don't even know if these sales jobs still exist, but basically, there's some sales companies whose tactic is to yell and literally verbally
Abuse.
mutilate and abuse their employees into action, which is, to me, that is I hope that doesn't exist. If that exists and you're in that position, just quit that job, please.
Yes.
No
that
amount
is
of
advice.
abuse.
That is, it's
You're right.
yeah. If you're halfway decent at sales, there will always be sales jobs.
It's not even halfway decent. If you're just a human being, no
No,
company
yeah.
needs
If you're a
to
human
be
being,
ever
you don't deserve it.
yelling
But
at you in order to promote you into action
if
to
you
sell
can,
better.
if you can sell apples, you can sell computers.
It
That was a
doesn't
weird
matter.
example.
You don't even have to sell. Apples are computers. Anyway, so that's just the reinforcements for purchasing more Apple products. Uh, so yeah, and I'm in this position, right? And I'm obviously lined into that position because one, I am primed for being abused and taken advantage of. And obviously everybody who knew better and had any kind of self-esteem has already quit. And here I am there. And every week, every Monday, there's this yelling session of just the worst treatment of human beings possible. And I'm obviously okay with it somehow, because that is my mindset as a human being, right? And every single Monday, I dread going into work.
I remember.
And I'm on the phone with you, and I'm crying on Sunday evenings. I mean, right? The
I
fact that
remember.
if
I
you're
remember.
crying to go to work because the work is so abusive,
Yeah,
please
that's
just quit that job.
oh my gosh.
It is not worth it. Uh, so yes, and in that situation, I feel hopeless. I feel like I have nowhere to go. Right now, I realize, wait, okay, you could just literally quit.
Right.
But I felt so trapped by the income, which honestly at the time there was no income because I was only commission based. So there was really no excuse for me to be there.
To this day, you still have dreams about
Yes, just a couple of days ago,
that you're working there.
still
Maybe you're not
employed
getting
there.
paid. Maybe it's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I wasn't getting paid, right? Anyway, and so the reason I say this is because I was hopeless and I was in the victim mindset, and I feel disempowered to even quit. Right? That tells you how low I was. And this is already in the United States. But my scarcity mindset of not having income, and which doesn't make sense because I already don't have income there, is still keeping me there, right? The
Mhm.
self-abuse and self uh uh, was
Disempowerment.
disempowerment, or even degradation that I have for self, is coming through in such way that I'm not quitting this job where the status quo is yelling. And the pivotal moment, I am literally, and I think on a phone with my mom at some point, because it was you and my mom, right? I would bounce between both of you, complaining of how terrible this was in order to last through the week, right? I had to like just talk to people and like go, I'm not crazy here, right? This is ridiculous. And I remember talking to you and my mom. I don't remember who it was. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm just not gonna make it. Like, I'm gonna give it like a week, and this is it, because this is just not worth it. Like, this is not working, and whatever, whatever, whatever." And I go back into the office that Monday after having saying like, "Okay, I'm just gonna. This is it for me. Like, there's no,
This is early on.
yeah.
Okay,
This is well, uh, I don't know how early on it was.
it wasn't at the end though. I'm sorry. Tell you straight.
Yeah, no, because I'm a salesperson. I'm in sales, and the management is treating everyone terribly, and
Oh, okay. Okay.
right.
Yeah.
And I'm just like reaching the pivotal point to where, okay, I've finally had enough, because they're always threatening to fire you,
Right.
right? And I'm like, wouldn't that be great? Now I'm thinking that would have been a great thing if they just fired me, but they always just threaten. They actually never fire. Anyway, and so I go back into the office, like kind of like almost reaching my point with the feeling of hopelessness, and they bring me in to the manager's office and ask me if I want a promotion to a manager. And to me, it was one of those, like, moments like, "Wait, what?"
It's like a um office space type thing. It's like, wait, you want to promote me?
But they have been yelling at all of us. I mean, they never actually yell at me, they yell at us as a team, right? It was not individual yelling.
Did you downplay that as well? They're only picking me because there's nobody else or anything like that.
Well, I realized why they were picking me, because
You're cheap. You'll be cheap. You'll accept it for less or
I mean, at the time, they gave me more than, at I'm out of college, right? So what? I'm 22 years old, right? So the idea, to them, less is irrelevant. To me, the fact that I have a base salary, and then an override on top of everyone else's commission,
right.
was like, I didn't even know how
Now,
much I would make,
now
but
there's
it didn't even matter. It
but
was a salary.
there's security in that.
Security. I got security. I felt somewhat empowered. And what was interesting is I felt motivated that, oh my gosh, if I'm going to be a manager, I can change I can change
You don't have to yell at
the
everybody.
corporate structure. Yeah, I
Yeah.
will not be the yelling one. I will not be, doing what they're doing to everybody else. Right. So, like, to me, it was an opportunity not only for me to feel more secure about my income, but to, like, oh, I can change the culture. Now, realistically speaking, that is harder to do if the culture is being propagated, from the top on down. And we were just one of the satellites office of a larger corporation. But yeah, I did look at that as an opportunity. I don't know if it worked out or not that way, but
I mean, I however it was management wise before you certainly did not bring any more hatred into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, to me, I brought in probably a lot more heart than anybody else had.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that was so right, there's these pivotal moments, and it's just an example of it, that you get an opportunity to think of the situation differently, right? Like, right, I was actively, obviously not at age of 22, not making any personal progress from cognitive standpoint of responsibility of looking at myself with someone who had more self-worth to where I did not have to go into an office that yelled at you all day and every day, right?
Mm,
And never actually respected you, right? Um, so I myself was not taking responsibility, and I was not making a choice into declaring my sovereignty, or seeing myself in a better situation, or going, yeah, this is a bad situation, I'm going to do something about it to change it. I was not doing any of that.
yeah.
But the universe brought that to me, right? The universe gave me that opportunity. Go, look, here's a way. Here's a way for you not to only see yourself as different, but make a difference.
Yeah. I
And in that case, it was actually in a direct position that I was. I did not actually have to change my job in order to feel better, right? It was
yeah.
within the same position and same network that was able to kind of have that little repivot.
That's I mean that's great. The I I this was a couple years after that. I was at my wit's end with my job. Uh and I ended up it was a big company, and I ended up getting an off getting an offer from a different team. Um which would have been which was better than where I was, but it's still I was not super happy with the company. And then out of the blue, a guy I used to know calls me up and says, "Hey, come interview over here." And I do, and I end up taking that job instead, which got me out of that awful company.
Yeah.
Um,
But
but
there
it was just out of the blue. It was
Yeah,
just
but I think
because
the
I was
universe just kind of
right. I think it was because I was open to the idea that this doesn't have to be my truth from now on.
do you think that's what it was? Do you think it was just when I was getting fed up with the idea of like I'm going to change something? And
Well,
that's when the
yeah,
management offer comes
I
in?
mean, I've got to change something, or something's got to change. Yeah, because um, by the time I had I left company A and moved to company B, uh, we had our marketing company running at to some capacity.
Yeah.
Maybe not enough to live on its own,
Yeah.
but yeah. But that was always kind of like my goal was to not work at a company and just do our thing. But um, I started company B with a 3-year goal. I'm like, oh, I have these stock options which vest in 3, or maybe it was my 401k that vests in 3 years. I'm like, okay, 3 years and 1 day. That's my target date to get out of here. And I came pretty close.
Yeah.
Uh, which in a way is its own
Like empowerment.
empowerment to
Yeah.
know, oh, yes, I'm doing this, and this isn't necessarily where I want to be. And but in the end, that company also was very different from when it started because it had like doubled in size
Yeah.
and stuff. But when I left, they were like, "Please don't tell me you're going to Acme, right?" Because Acme had drawn dozens of people away from this company, and I'm like, because he's like, we'll do what we can to keep you from going to Acme. I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna go, work with my wife at a marketing company that we run. He's like, oh yeah, there's nothing I can offer that's gonna keep you from doing that. So good luck.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it, eh, I would say all of us within us have these thoughts of disempowerment, right? And we feel like we lost our sovereignty, and we feel like we are at the mercy of the world, right? But even if, I guess, if you're listening to this, you probably already realize that something is changing or something needs to change.
Mhm.
But even for those human beings that do not recognize that something needs to change, um, the universe kind of gives you those opportunities. It
Yeah.
gives you, it is, and this is not to give you false hope in a sense that like this is the only thing that you need to live on. I think the universe is programmed that way. Your higher self or your spirit, or the universe or whatever is always trying to mold you and bring you into alignment with what is the best for you.
Yeah.
Like it will just guide you in the most serendipitous way at times. And they come out of left field. They come out of like this weird, like, wait, what? I
Yeah.
didn't even see this coming.
So, I mean, be open to them. I know there were opportunities that had come my way when I was still employed at company A. I got a call out of the blue from some recruiter, and I'm just like, "Oh yeah, I've got a job. Never mind." And I'm like, "Why would I say that? Why would I not hear them out? What if I didn't even hear them out. I don't even know why. I was not open to the possibility of getting out of a situation that I was not happy in. It makes no sense.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Do you think you're afraid of changing the status quo? Or you're
I mean,
discounting an opportunity?
I was afraid of changing the status quo, even though I was unhappy with it, which is messed up. Which is the
Because you're afraid of
embodiment
change.
of victimhood. It's like, well, I'm here, and this sucks, but everything else is unknown, and unknown equals scary, right? Because
Yeah.
that's all higher animals, even
You
hmm,
need to scooch over. She's kind of trying to bridge her pause.
you know mammals and
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
primates and everything all are afraid of the unknown. It's the unknown is scary, like by definition, and
Yeah.
the idea that the ability to get past the unknown being scary is probably one of the biggest factors in, I don't want to say success because success isn't the goal, but in empowerment and happiness. Because the world is unknown, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? Who knows what's going to happen today?
Yeah.
And so much of it is literally outside of our control. And being at peace with the unknown and even embracing the unknown, which, yeah, it's scary because it's unknown. What if it's bad? But what if it's good? Reframe it to go, instead of, "Well, oh my gosh, oh, what is the worst that could happen?" It was, what's the best that could happen? Just think about it that way.
Yeah. I think the way I look at it now, which is to me, it's still harder, just because I am, I, I guess somebody said I'm a Virgo and then therefore it's because of that. But I grew up with so much lack of control and so much lack of hope, right? The control offers me safety, right? And so it's still hard for me to like release. And I realize like there's this frequency within me there's just ingrained that is just control, right? To offset the feeling of unsafety.
Mhm.
Um, but what I'm starting to see more and more, that surrender into the unknown actually has more opportunities than that than the perceived version of control or the plan that we have for ourselves,
All right.
because we are still to some extent functioning in some sort of pre-programmed consciousness
Yeah.
of our past and projecting into the
Right.
future.
Our plan is limited by the plan itself,
Yeah.
and the unknown is infinite. Yes, I guess it's infinitely bad, but it's also infinitely good. And
Hmm.
when we shut off the unknown, we shut off all of that. We shut off all this potential, and there's so much good potential in there.
Well, we shut off the universe's way to interfere or
Right.
like just literally bring in new opportunities of something amazing,
Right. It's
because we like have these defined parameters that we want to function in because we want to
right.
feel
It,
it's safe.
to the person who wants to buy a house, they're like, well, in order to buy a house, I need to save up 20%, so I need to go get a job, and I need to stay there for so many years because the bank will give me a loan if I haven't been employed for 3 years. And you've just committed yourself to this multi-year plan at a job that you may not like because you want a house. Instead of, I'm not saying don't get the job, and I'm not saying don't get the house. That's almost irrelevant. But instead of, oh, I would like a place to live, So you're not necessarily committed to a house. House, right, wrong, good, bad, doesn't matter. And I guess I need a way to even saying I need a way to pay for that is kind of imposing that onto it.
Yeah,
Being
yeah.
open to, well, I want a place to live. I want a place to live. Who knows? Maybe you end up sharing an apartment with a friend or something that you don't have to stay at a job for 3 years in order to pay for. Maybe whatever. I don't know, but there are ways to get. I don't even want to say what you want, but there are ways to
Get more. I
get
think it's more.
more
Yeah.
without pinning yourself down to a certain path.
Well, I've heard many people say this, like, our perception of what is possible is limited by our imagination. But our imagination has been helplessness and victimhood. And then by default, that is the outcome that we're projecting forward. Now, unless we have spent many years, trying to actualize ourselves away from, feeling lack of sovereignty into complete open mindset of unlimited being, you and I have been on this path for quite some time, but I don't think we're there yet. Um, we are limiting the scope of our existence, or the scope of our reach, or the scope of our extrapolation and experience into the world by the definition of our predetermined path, right?
Yeah.
Do you have something to?
No, yeah, there was a there. We just saw it in a TV show yesterday, and reminded me of it. That there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. It's from Hamlet. But in as much as what's possible is greater than what you can dream up.
Our one mindset can dream up, right? Because by default, the mindset draws on the known. That's the only thing we can dream, is the known, right? What can we project forward is something that we already know, and then therefore we can stitch it together into a different story or a different puzzle, but it's still the same tapestry.
Our ideas of what's possible are limited by our own experiences and our own worldview and all that. It's like, I'm super guilty of this. It's like, do I think I could go make $1 million? Oh, maybe not. Why? Because I haven't, or whatever.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
But everybody who's made $1 million at one point also hadn't. But yeah, they did it. Why not you?
It's like selling $1 million right now. It reminds me of the
$1 million.
$1 million.
It's like
So Austin Powers. It's like,
isn't as much as it
can
used
you
to be.
survive on $1 million? Like, I don't even know if you can make a year on $1 million anymore. I mean, that is a silly thing to think about. I'm sure you can make it $1 million for a decade or two. But you know what I mean? Like, I think $1 billion would be like the number you would throw out these days.
Yeah.
As like
some crazy amount of money, right? That's the thing. Even my example was limited.
Yeah, right.
My example was like,
like, wait, what?
That's not,
that is a strange number to throw out.
Not, shoot for the moon. Aim. What is it? Aim for the stars, and you might hit the moon.
I don't know.
Something like that. It's like, if you put your aim high. Even if you aim high and miss, at least you're higher than you were.
Yeah, but that so I will just bring that in. This is not necessarily a topic, but that is how like positive thinking and reinforcement, or what people call those. I don't believe in them, so I don't actually suggest you do that. But that, if it works for you, then do them. Those vision boards, right? That is how they work. If your mind, the reason why they work. Here's why they work. If your mind is in the victimhood mindset, and if it's a small mindset and you don't feel sovereign, the way you trick your mind into this openness to the unknown is you make a board, and then it's like in your mind, you position that board or the journal or whatever to be this portal you open your heart into the portal that is this vision board. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the reason why it works is because you surrender all the knowns that have all the limitation into the unknown, which you basically actually surrender into the universe to go, guess what? I have no clue, or you have no fucking plans. And so what I would like you to do is make this vision board work. And you actually, that is an amazing trick that works for people to open yourself into something bigger than the Horatio can dream of.
The uh we watched an episode of Open Minds with Regina Meredith on Gaia, where she was saying that I think it's like at the end of the year, her and her friends get together and do a vision board for like the next year, and hers manifest at least much more than all of her friends do, and her friends are like, "What are you doing that we're not?" And it was something to the effect of, she said that you put, I want this house, I want this car. And so, you have a picture of the big house and you have the Ferrari and you have all this stuff on your vision board. And while I may have a picture of a house and a car, it's more the energy of it. It's like, I don't want this car. I want what the car represents to me. I don't want this house. I want what the idea of a new living space or a better living space means to me. So it isn't tied down. It isn't specific. It's open to what it means to you, instead of, I want this specific. It's like writing a number and sticking up there. I want that in my bank account. It's like,
Yeah.
well, that is unlikely to happen, in as much as, the idea, putting up things that embody what wealth means to you.
Or what
What
wealth will
wealth,
bring into your life. What is
yes,
your idea of money? Money is money is a weird thing. Money is
right,
actually not a thing. Money gives you something
right.
that is a
It's
concept.
a facilitator,
Yeah, but it's a facility or something that you're seeking
right,
for beyond the dollar amount.
right. The dollar amount becomes irrelevant because it's what the dollar amount allows for in your life,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
But you can get all of those things without the money.
You can. The last episode, we just talked about the server rack that I got free. Makes no sense, but it happened.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So if you're going to do vision boards, I would, not just vision boards. If you're going to envision a better future,
Mhm.
I would be less specific. I want this, and I want the husband who's 6 foot tall and handsome, and I want not that. It's what that means to you, what that saying what that fulfills might be the wrong way to word it, because but what that embodies and what you want to bring into your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a yeah, we're scared of all the unknowns.
Mhm. But that limits us, because the unknowns, we're afraid that they're going to go bad. But if you're afraid they're going to go bad, they're more likely to go bad. But if you're open to the possibility of them going in a beautiful direction, that opens them up to go in a beautiful direction. Good things will happen, bad things will happen.
Yeah.
That's what will happen in life, period, to everybody. But it feels to me, and I know this from my own personal experience, that if I think bad things are going to happen, they're going to tilt more in the bad things direction. And if I think good things are going to happen, they're going to tilt more in the good things direction.
Yeah. But I mean, I think partially, and this is what I'm trying to do more, which is hard, but like surrender into the universe, bringing the unknown to you
Yeah, without
and
the specifics.
yeah, and then be excited about the fact that the universe can offer you unknowns, right? Like instead of being afraid of the unknown, actually welcome the
Embrace the
unknown.
unknown. Yeah.
Yeah, which is really hard, especially if for someone who'd been brought up under my
Yeah.
definitions of
It,
no
it
food, no water.
it's hard for me too. But I am trying to do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Ooh, short one.
yeah. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.